welcome to Step Into the Story. It is April 16th. We are here for our April book chat. Um, and I'm here with Barb Tanner Wallace. How are you, Barb?
Uh, I have no voice, but I definitely feel better than I sound.
Yeah, you've got the whole like husky thing going on. But like when you opened your mouth, I thought, oh, because you look great. Because I knew you'd been sick, and I was like, Anyway, yeah.
I'm getting my spring cold out of the way.
Very good. Very good. I haven't had that yet. It'll probably hit me, when I don't want it.
I blame my grandson. So because he crawled all over me and breathed on my face and sneezed in my face and stuck his fingers in my mouth.
Small price to pay though, right? For baby snuggles.
I mean, I knew I was going to get sick when he was doing it, so whatever.
Yeah. And we're sort of in baby watch here, so I'm here today. We don't know what the next month is going to bring. Babies come when they're ready. So
I was thinking this morning, I said we're nothing if not prolific by proxy here at Step in the Story.
Right? Like, oh my goodness.
Because then I go on baby watch in the fall.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, I don't expect going on baby watch again for a while, but you never know, right? Life is weird like that.
That's it.
All right. So what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about the Queens of London. I have my book right here with the latest by Heather Webb. We talked about Heather Webb before because we did 3 Words to Say Goodbye, but for her.
Right, with Crystal Gaynor.
This one is a solo effort by her. It's the story of Alice Diamond, who's otherwise known as Diamond Annie, and her all-female gang, the 40 Elephants, which was a real gang in the 1920s. They were a shoplifting gang that terrorized London. And in addition to Alice, we have her nemesis, which is the female Inspector Lillian Wiles, also real, and a young girl, Hera, who has run away from her guardian and her uncle. And Hera is fictional, but the other 2 were very real people.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't realize, because I like to be blissfully unaware sometimes. So I actually didn't realize that Alice and Lillian were based on real people until I read the author's note. And that gave me a chance to form my own opinions as I read. And because they're not necessarily celebrities that we know of going into it. So like you and I both read Can't We Be Friends recently, yes, which is by Eliza Knight and Denny S. Bryce, and it's the story of Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald and their friendship. So when you go into that, you already have like some preconceived notions of who those people are. But with this, I didn't know anything. And I will say, like right off the bat, that I think Heather did a really fantastic job with them, because I didn't get the sense of any kind of constriction or being tied to facts, and sometimes that makes the story a little more prescriptive, perhaps. But I really found them very well drawn and very natural.
Yeah, and the thing I thought she nailed, and I thought I texted you about that, was Alice's voice.
Yeah,
the way she talked with the slang and the street talk, and there was a real edge to it, and she did such a great job of that. Like, yeah, you definitely saw the different point of views, and every person had a different voice, and they were all in keeping with the period.
And okay, so if you think about it, like I might have liked a little bit more backstory on Lillian. Like I found some of her, like what motivated her to be who she was in that moment, perhaps a little bit scarce. But you're right, with the voices, like Lillian definitely sounded like a police inspector.
Yeah.
And Alice has definitely got the slang and the rough language. And then we look at Hera, and she's 9, I think. Yeah. And she thinks like a 9-year-old, and she slips into a 9-year-old's voice. Like she doesn't have a 9-year-old sounding older until we get closer to the end. But we also realize that Hera's done some growing up in the past couple of months.
But she still sounds like a kid, even grown up.
Yeah, she just comes up with some really wise things,
You know what I like? So just sticking with Heather's voice for a second, a lot of times when you read books, or I shouldn't say a lot of times, but often when you read a historical fiction and they try to use, the slang or try to keep in the language, you are aware of the author using it.
Yeah.
Versus this, I never was. It was always coming from Alice's head.
Yeah,
And
it was solidly in, like, well, I guess we
oh,
would
so
say deep point of view.
yeah, we're talking at the same time. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no author intrusion whatsoever.
No,
No, it was seamless.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I
Now,
like that a lot.
and I actually the addition of Hero, who's a fictional character, she's very centered to the story. In the beginning, she's living with her uncle, and when her parents die in India, and he's going to send her away to a boarding school to make her become a servant. And so she runs away because that's her what a 9-year-old says. I'm going to run away. She doesn't think it through other than I'm going to run away. I'm going to need some money. And she takes off. And then with her while she's living on the street and her gradual becoming a pickpocket. And she's very Dickens-esque.
Yeah.
She is plucked right out of a Dickens character in a book. Sorry.
Yeah.
The cold medicine people, forgive me. But I said that on Threads. So it's like, she's got a neat little Dickens subplot going here.
Yeah.
And the Alice's story, if you want to keep with that, if you like Peaky Blinders, very Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, like I almost think of the mother in Peaky Blinders, and I haven't watched it for a while because, of course, it ended a while ago. Polly, I think her name was Polly, but yeah, I really got that feel. It's just that it's a women's gang. It's not, that family, but it does really have that feel, same time period kind of thing, and does have that feel. And I think with Lillian, it also gave me a feel of Miss Scarlet and the Duke.
Is that the who wrote that?
It's a show on Masterpiece.
Oh, okay, that's why I don't know it.
Yeah, and Lillian's trying to solve crimes and make her way in law enforcement, and that's firmly a man's field. Yep. And so she butts up against, other detectives, law enforcement, those kinds of attitudes. And so if you like any of those elements, either like the Dickensian thing or Peaky Blinders or Miss Scarlet and the Duke, you'll probably enjoy this book.
No, I think you'd love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about Dorothy for a minute, because Dorothy is another Dickens character. I don't know how much Dickens you've read.
Hot take, I hate Dickens.
Oh, okay. My husband has read every book that Dickens has ever read.
Yeah, I think Dickens is either you love it or you hate it.
Including for Christmas, I got him this obscure book that was edited by Dickens, and it's him and Wilkie Collins and Elizabeth Gaskell, and they wrote this chapter by chapter short story, and they each took a chapter. And I found it and gave it to him, and he's like, "Now I've read everything Dickens has read." But
I love Mrs. Gaskell, by the way, so I would.
He's reading. He just finished. What's he reading by her? He's got one now by her. He's a big Elizabeth Gaskell fan.
It's not North and South.
No, we love that one. He's got another one, and he read
Wife
Cranford.
and Daughters.
That's when he's reading Wife and Daughters.
Yeah,
and he just finished Cranford.
Nice.
My husband doesn't read anything that was written after 1900. But
well, that's too bad.
Yeah. But going back to Dorothy, she is very, very Dickens in that she is very likable. She's got a heart of gold. And we don't mean that in like the obnoxious Southern way of saying, "Oh, what a heart of gold."
Bless her heart. Yeah.
Bless her heart. It's a heart of gold. No, she has got a good heart.
She does.
She's naive as all get out. There's a part of her story where from the moment it started, I was like, "Can't you see this? It's like a giant neon sign like down the road, lady." But so she's very naive. And because of that, people think she's stupid. And she puts out, because she's also beautiful. So they assume because she's sweet and pretty, she must be dumb. And she's not. She's just not street smart.
Yeah, she's smart about things that she's smart about, but then other stuff she's really oblivious.
Right. And what I loved about it is there's a point in the story, she and Alice both have similar points where they have to choose about their future. Like things have gone wrong. And Alice picks one route and Dorothy picks the route of, you know what? I am going to make something of myself. I'm going to pick myself up and they're not going to stop me. And she does. She goes much more in a much more forward, positive route. And I like how, in a way, they were parallel in that sense.
Yeah, and actually what I loved about that particular scene with Dorothy when she's like, all right, I'm out kind of thing, is when she walks away, she gives the 2-finger salute.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and you can just like when she does that, you can just see her hips swaying as she walks away. And I'm thinking, you go, girl, like finally. It's that gumption moment, right?
Yeah. This is a girl who's she's just as, comes from just as poor a place as the others, and worked her way up, and is a hard worker and a good worker. And she gets that moment where she's like, you know what? I am better than this.
Yeah.
I am better than you all think I am, and I am better than what this is going on in my life. I'm going to do something better.
But both of them had opportunities to take different paths. Like Alice, we were talking about this just before we went on, and then you were like, let's talk about this while we're on the air.
But we were chatting away, yeah.
Right, but both of them have opportunities to do the right thing. And like Alice has opportunities where, people see her softer side, or she acknowledges that she cares for people and considers doing something different, and then pushes it away. And it got me thinking about their home lives and their upbringings. Because if you look at Alice's father, he's abusive. She's grown up in a rough situation. Crime has always been the thing, right? Like this has been her whole life. And Dorothy's brought up by her mom, and she's brought up by a single mom. So it's not like she's had the perfect upbringing. But her mom has a job. She's kind and she's supportive. And, like Alice often thinks, like, what other choice do I have than, to walk away from those things? And Dorothy sees opportunities, and then here is kind of in the middle. And I think she's the one that can choose to go either way. So she could become a member of the 40 Elephants, or she can choose a different kind of life for herself, even at 9 years old.
Well, we're not spoiling anything because it's true stuff. So whatever happened to Alice is true. Right. But at the very beginning, Alice says, I never think long term. Yeah. She's always thinking, she knows that she's going to be rich one day, poor the next, rich one day, poor the next. And she never thinks about the future. And I think that that's kind of colored her decision making, is that this is a short run. My life is a short run. I'm going to live it to the fullest. And I think that she's scared to make the harder choices. Yeah. Which would require her to have nothing for a while.
Yeah. And it would be so unfamiliar. There'd be like, it's the devil, Yeah. And she's always afraid that, she really cares for Simon, that we'll see in the book that she starts seeing somebody named Simon, and she really cares for him, but she's always afraid he's going to see her for who she is. And then, she blows that up before he can, kind of thing. Like she's very good at blowing things up.
What's kind of funny is that I just thought about this, but Dorothy spends the whole book wanting people to see her for more than she is. And Alice is thinking she's afraid they're going to see her for what she is.
Yep.
So they're two sides of the same coin.
And Hera just wants to be secure and loved, right? Yeah. That's all she wants.
They both want love. But Alice is afraid that she's unlovable, whereas Dorothy is, I am lovable. See, look how great I am.
Yeah, and I deserve better.
One's afraid to be seen. It's like,
and I deserve better. And she's not afraid. Like, one of the things that really stood out to me too was there's a section in Hera's point of view where she wishes she could like have a bath and clean up, because since she'd gone to stay with Alice, other than that first night, she hasn't had a bath. And the first thing that Dorothy does when Hera shows up on her doorstep is like, come in, like, let's run you a bath and get you cleaned up, and like, and care and nurtures her. And it's just a completely different thing.
Alice mothers her the way she was mothered. versus, because Alice's mother's not in the picture, and
No, she mentions her, like says mom and
wasn't
dad
there.
were out, but like as far as a force of nurturing or caring or anything, she's really just a name. She really doesn't.
Right, it was more of a fend for yourself kind of upbringing versus
Yeah.
Dorothy, who did have a loving family, and when her mother finds her, it's like, oh well, yeah, you remind me of my little daughter, so come on in, type of thing. And
Yeah.
Hera's great because Hera could go either way,
Yeah.
and you can see her conscience making choices,
Yep.
and she's constantly stuck in the middle, which I
Yeah.
like. And then there's Lillian, and that's what we were talking about off stage, because you were not as warm to Lillian as I was.
Just in the beginning, I warmed to her, but just in the beginning. So you talk about Lillian.
Lillian is the police officer. She's a female police officer, and she is put in charge of stopping the shoplifters. And one of the things she's concerned about is that there was a bunch of women who became police officers shortly after the war, after World War I. Now that their men are back, they're being moved out because people don't think women could be police officers.
Yeah.
And she decides, if I can capture Diamond Annie, I can not only prove that I am worthwhile as an officer, maybe they'll save the other 19. And so she is ruthlessly pursuing Diamond Annie. So you're in her head the whole time, and you thought of her as like, she's also pursuing Hera for
Right.
one, because she had a connection to Diamond Annie, and two, for a subplot we won't talk about.
Right.
Because we don't want to spoil it. But she sees things very black and white at the beginning, like a cop. And that's what you said you had a problem with, that she was so black and white at the beginning.
Well, like I felt like she was the right moral choice, right?
Yep.
She's on the side of the law. She's, out there. She's supposed to be stopping shoplifting. She's supposed to be bringing in orphans so that she gets them off the street. But her focus is on her career.
Yeah.
And which I understand. It just meant that I wasn't warm to her necessarily. Like, I didn't not like her. I was just kind of ambivalent about her. And
yeah, I didn't have a feeling one way or the other to her. I adored Dorothy. I adored Hera. I had a lot of trouble with Alice.
I had a hard time liking her, but I didn't hate her or anything. But I think what really struck me, until we get further into the story and more details about Hera's situation come to light, and then Lillian discovers more about what's really going on with Hera. But in the beginning, both she and Alice see Hera as a way to achieve their ambitions, rather than seeing Hera as a scared young girl on the streets who, is in a really bad situation. It's all about, if I bring Hera in, what is that going to do for me? Or, if I bring Hera into the 40 Elephants, then I can use her talents to do whatever. And so in the end, we know Alice isn't going to change because, historically, she goes on. But Lillian learns, and you pointed this out too, that doing the right thing isn't always being 100% by the book.
Right.
And it's sometimes that slight difference between the law and what's right, and how they're not always the same thing. So I like that about her. I like that she became more like wanted to do what was best for Hera and not necessarily best for her career.
Right. And what I think I said offline is, I think that that's the natural trajectory for a lot of police officers. You come out of the academy and Lillian's a new police officer. All you know is the law, black, white. This is what I'm supposed to enforce. It's not until you get into wanting to do into humanity that you start seeing the grades. So I think that is a natural trajectory. Yeah. What I did like, and this is the first book I think I've read in a long, long time. I read one a couple years ago that did it well too. I wish I could remember the name of it now. But where we had a negative character arc, which is a lot of authors don't do that. You know, you have your traditional, we're going to pull the curtain back a minute. You have your traditional scene where traditional character arc where the character starts one way and she grows and changes over the course of the book and evolves into a new person. Alice went backwards. You know,
Yeah.
she started out at the top, and it's a very tragic arc in that she slides all the way down to the bottom.
Yep.
And I thought that, you know, you don't see that often.
No, and I think
Which
if you
made this
didn't
book
have
unusual.
if you didn't have 4 points of view, I think it would be really risky to do that.
Yeah.
But when you have 4 different points of view with 4 different arcs, I think having one that's a negative arc is okay. And yeah, and it's still, and at the same time, it still had not a horrible resolution for her, you know, like, I know that's going to sound weird, but there is some closure that she gets at the end.
Yeah.
That I thought was, you know, okay, but you're right, it's a negative character arc, and but I guess at least
she's at the top of the world. She is the Queen of London.
Yeah.
And she certainly isn't at the end.
Yeah. And
A
then,
little more self-aware maybe, but that's about, you know.
Yeah, and then we have, you know, the conclusion for Dorothy. And Dorothy, I guess what I really loved about her is that her intentions were always pure. Like, she wanted to help Hera because she wanted to help Hera. She had no ulterior motive. In fact, she got grumbled at when Hera would come into the store, and she was always giving her food. She was good to the dog. You know, her door was always
the dog.
open.
Biscuit.
Biscuit was the greatest.
Yet another Dickens flair there.
Yeah. And did you picture him as sort of like a shaggy, ratty kind of Jack Russell-y kind of size? Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like a little terrier.
Yeah, little, and kind
he got
of
a soup bone at the end. He got his reward too.
Yeah, and he was licking the soup bone, and I loved Biscuit. He was, and such a great name, right?
And he actually plays a very key role.
He does, because I think if something hadn't happened in a particular scene, it really propelled Hera to really look at what was going on and what she wanted.
Yeah. So, you know, and you mentioned this in the note, and I'll read it but you had said everything was character driven.
Yeah.
This was not we've read a lot of books where it's an event book where it's like, this event happened, this happened, this happened. I'm writing an event book. It's if you're writing about history, sometimes that's the way it is. They're very plot driven. This was very personal, very character driven. And there was a lot of action. I mean, I will give her that it was kind of a caper book.
Oh, and yeah, and it was a caper book, and there were external forces for sure, but it wasn't, you know, the plot wasn't hung on a hook of the London Blitz or the Resistance, and I'm just going by World War II, but, you know,
that's okay. That's kind of how I'm doing it too.
Yeah. Well, but, you know, Lillian was a nurse in World War I. Like, it wasn't hung on that kind of a hook, or like the one I have coming up is, you know, the Halifax explosion is the big event. Right. And
mine is the Resistance. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting to have something that felt completely character driven, because the action came from the decisions that the characters made, and while it was based on true people, and so there's a bit of that framework in there, you still don't get the sense that there's an external force. It's all based on what Alice does.
Their decisions drove everything.
Yeah.
I think it was a really, really interesting television show.
Me too. I could totally see it as a mini series or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
okay, we need to make that a thing.
Make that happen, Netflix. Come on.
Yeah. Heather's agent has to get on it.
That's it. We decided Heather needs to have this book made a series.
Yeah.
And I'll say one last thing, because I remember making the comment when we did Three Ways to Say Goodbye, and I said I felt like the characters were not well developed. And I had said at the time, I know that these women, if they could do the whole book themselves, would do it differently. And Heather proved me right. When she didn't have to stick to an outline that she had a predetermined outline.
Right.
And she had that luxury of really milking these characters. And
Yeah,
I'm sure when we read
yeah.
Hazel's, it's going to be the exact same way. And in it, again, it's because of the outline issue of working with a second person, not the writers. And that's proof of this.
Yeah.
It's so deep, and has so much subtext and so many layers.
Yeah, it's a completely different dynamic when you're working with another person.
Exactly.
And I can't pretend to be inside anyone's process when they do that.
No,
But there are sometimes you look at it and you think, I wonder if this was the case, or I wonder if it's being, it's just a little more constrictive,
yeah,
and you
I
don't
think
get
that's
it.
what it is.
And honestly, that's the other thing though too um, about writing a book that's not event based, is that you have a lot more latitude
That's true.
to make decisions for your characters and let them guide you. And sometimes that's the difference too, because I really feel like that might have played a part here, but who knows?
I don't know. But I will say that I would totally agree that Heather is great. Recommend?
100% recommend.
100%. If you, like we said, if you like Peaky Blinders, if you like the 1920s, if you like Dickens, if you like a good caper / character-driven book with all women who are very much in charge of their own future.
Yeah.
And the men all play supporting roles in this. There is no man.
Yeah. I love that it's female centric.
Yeah.
The other thing too is, like, I wasn't sure I was going to really, really like it when I first started it. And then by the time I got to about the halfway mark, it really started, all the pieces started coming together, and I really kind of get caught up in it. So,
Yep.
That I came away from it much more satisfied than I thought I might be going in. So, yay.
Yeah. And like, going back, I know I've said it like 1,000 times this episode, but you were so immersed in that world. She does such a wonderful job of building that world, and the poverty and the just the dirt and the filth and what they were clawing their way out of, versus the good places. And and just in Alice's viewpoint, I think that Alice could have been a disaster in the wrong hands. In Heather's hands, she created a character that, while not necessarily, she's more of an anti-hero, but she's very real, and she's someone you do feel for.
Yeah, and I think that was the other point I made before we hit the button, that while she's not, a heroine that you really root for necessarily, because, she's an anti-hero, at the same time, there are glimpses of vulnerability where you realize that she could make a different decision, and when she doesn't, you feel sorry for her because you understand why she doesn't, right? Like, it's not like she doesn't because she's just a horrible person. She doesn't because most of it is fear. And so you feel sorry for her. And so I wasn't without sympathy for her.
She's so three-dimensional. All the characters were, I thought.
Yeah, she really did a great job with point of view and with voice. I think those two things really, really pops this, up to the top.
So 2 big thumbs up from us, and a shout out to Netflix to make this a series.
Exactly. All right. So why don't you tell us about what is coming up for our next show?
Okay. I'm actually kind of excited about this one too, because our guest is going to be Piper Hughley, who wrote American Daughters. She also wrote By Her Own Design, which we loved. American Daughters, I think she steps it up again. It's the story of Teddy Roosevelt's daughter, Alice, and Booker T. Washington's daughter, Portia, and their friendship over the years. And she does a terrific job. She's going to be joining us along with Renee Ryan, who is they're both original Step Into the Story people. So they're back. Donna is iffy because she's on Baby Watch.
I'm hoping to be there. I would really, really like to be there, and I probably will, but I've given everybody the heads up that, things are, who's to say?
I'm looking forward to it because Piper is a really good interview. She's got a lot to say. She is very articulate and very opinionated. She should be articulate. She's an English professor. I should check and see if she's Dr. Hughley. They call her the right title. But she is someone that you really are going to learn a lot from when you listen to her, because there's a lot of subtext in this book. A lot of subtext.
And that's at our regular 2 p.m.
Yep, on
on
April
Tuesday
30th.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then next month in May, you are taking a month off. And we are Renee Ryan is coming in to be the guest host.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to watch those, and you never know when I might pop in, but I am planning to take that time off just because you know I will be getting all the baby snuggles at some point in May. So all right, so I guess that's it for us for today.
Thank you all for watching. Remember the book, Queens of London by Heather Webb. It has been everywhere because it's been recommended all over the place with no surprise. And Pick Up American Daughters. I recommended that on Yellow Brick Reads, and I know people were putting it on hold.
Yeah. And
really really worth it.
You can always follow us in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/stepintothestory, and then on YouTube and Instagram at Step Into the Story.
Storybooks.
Yep.
So.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.